Welcome to week 4 video. Most of y'all have gotten your funding research paper done on time. Great. If you haven't finished that, complete it and turn it in as soon as possible. Might be a deduction because of the lateness, but it's much better than having a 0. And the pre-proposal letter was also due by Sunday night, and then of course the weekly discussion. The good news is this week is going to be a much easier one. You're needing to focus on your grant proposal. If you're looking to do a grant proposal to government grant, let me know which grant proposal you're looking to do for the government, and I will create something that's more on par with a foundation grant, something like 5 or 6 pages as opposed to 200 or 300 pages. If you're looking to do a foundation grant, of course, you need to satisfy the funder. So whatever the funder is asking for, your particular funder is asking for, that's what you need to satisfy. So if they have an online grant application, download that and use that as your model, and then send that to me. All of these, of course, will be sent to me, and I will pretend that I am the funder, and I will grade them, and I will tell you whether or not you got your grant or not. So, but anyway, if you're looking for a government grant of any sort, let me know what government grant you're going to do, and I will send you a pared down application. And if you're doing a private foundation or corporate grant, you need to satisfy that grant's that funder's requirements. Hope that makes sense. I do want to cover one thing briefly. The discussion board question for week number 2, I think, actually, which I got around to, which I was able to grade in week 3, was asking about, what criteria should you look at in determining what funders to go for. And I want to back up just a little bit. The very first week, very first videos, I tried to put grant writing in the context of all of fundraising. And what you should have known then, what you should know now, is that, for nonprofits, for the most part, I'm not talking about your universities necessarily, or your research library, research hospitals, or things like that. But your smaller nonprofits, most of the funding actually comes from just people. And so in fundraising, you never forget the fact that a lot of times it's individuals and people that give the money. And there's different models of fundraising, and I'll send you some stuff in the next few days that I found as I've looked at this issue. But in the world of grant writing then, and I laid this out in week 1, there's private foundations, there's corporate foundations, there's and then there's government. And in the response to what criteria should you consider, several of y'all, and this is the first time I've taught this class where this has happened, and this is a revised book, so I'm kind of wondering if this revised version, I need to go back and look at it, and I have been looking at it, kind of makes more of the case for starting with government grants, because there's much more money there. And while it is true that the total amount of money that the government gives away in grants is a whole lot bigger than the amount of money given away by foundations and corporations, most of that government grant money goes to certain types of organizations, like hospitals, like universities, research universities. So much of the money, the National Science Foundation, even the Department of Ed, I mean, it will go to do some training and stuff, but guess where it goes? It goes to universities. It goes to some of it trickles down through the state to schools, public schools. But I mean, a lot of that grant money is not, I wouldn't say earmarked, but you've got to be a special kind of organization um, to really have access to that. You it's not your average organization that can tap into that. Now, some of the health and human services stuff, some of those kind of nonprofits, there are perhaps some health and human service um, grant opportunities, and I'm not saying that nonprofits shouldn't pursue government grants. In fact, uh, I'm not saying that you should focus uh, totally on one thing at all. I think, and I've read this, and I think I'll send this to you too. It's actually advisable if you look at different ways to raise money for your organization, so you're not left high and dry if you put all your one eggs in one basket, and then that doesn't work out. So, I mean, if there is a government grant possibility for your organization and your funding need, go for it. But don't necessarily rule out um, grant possibilities from foundations and that sort of thing, because the average nonprofit, small nonprofit, first gets more money from individuals, and second, in general, gets more money from um, foundations and corporations than 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 they do from the government. The surveys that have been done across nonprofit world is that they might get 8% on average. Some get more, some get a lot more, but about 8% on average of their revenue comes from um, federal, state, or local dollars. So um, nothing against federal, state, or local dollars. There's a whole lot more to do to get them. There's a whole lot more to do to satisfy them. But they can be a great, great source, an ongoing kind of source for organizations that fit them. Um, so, any rate, not trying to talk them down. I'm just trying to say that what you and your organization for your funding need to do is find the best fit, whatever, and go for that. And I would say diversify in the sense of, if you really are part of a nonprofit, you really are responsible for fundraising. Don't just do one thing necessarily. Um, Try to have funds coming from various sources. With regard to to as I've read again um, the textbook and the author of the textbook, and I think about it, um, I'm thinking he's writing to a particular population, um, researchers in large part, who get federal grant dollars. And if you look at that whole chapter that really talks about, okay, start with a larger venue, and then if that doesn't work, go down. Part of his argument for that isn't necessarily even the funds, although, that is a larger pool of dollars, and researchers absolutely should go for those kinds of dollars. But part of the argument he was making, it was more helpful for your career. Well, you know what? If you're doing university research and you get an NSF grant, that does mean something. If you got an NSF grant, that's a whole lot better than getting the local foundation to fund you. You would put that in the newspaper, and it actually could help your career. But the average nonprofit, the ones that you and I are a part of, you're not worried about that I get NSF, and is that going to mean I can move to a larger company and be a fundraiser at a larger company. You're trying to find money for your nonprofit, wherever that is, and whatever kind that is. And so I'm not saying it's not nice to pull down a big one. LeTourneau several years back, Paul Boggs, who does grant writing for LeTourneau, secured a $1.2 or $3 million Department of Education grant to help with attrition. That's fantastic. It's bragging rights. But by and large, the day in and day out, it's whatever works. It's whatever works for the funding need that you have. And generally, you don't go chasing after money just because it's there. Generally, you have a need, and you look for what are the sources of funding that's going to fit that need. Who's going to be interested in this? So just kind of wanted to set the record straight. So, absolutely look at government grants as well as private foundation and corporate grants. Government grants are less criteria oriented beyond do I fit this grant possibility, because they're very particular, what they're wanting you to do with that money. So are you prepared? Can you do that? Can you actually satisfy that? Can you then, spend the time and energy to write the grant proposal, which again is 200 or 300 pages long sometimes, a lot of attachments and stuff. So and when they become posted, they're often posted for like a month and then they're gone. So, you really have to be on your game to go after government grants. But beyond, is it a fit? Can you satisfy it? Do you want to satisfy it? There's a checklist of stuff to do to try to be successful, but most of it isn't about, is it a good thing for you beyond that? When it comes to private foundation grants or corporate grants, you do need to look at a whole lot of things. First of all, is your funding need and is your organization part of their interest area? Do they fund in your area? That's a huge one. Geography is huge for a lot of foundations, and corporations tend to only give where they have business. And they do it kind of for other motives, for getting their name out there and positive PR, that sort of stuff. And they're good for it. It's fairly easy to get, a bunch of local companies, particular ones that have national or international, scope. It's fairly easy to get sponsorships from them for $2, $3, $5, $10,000 or more dollars, and if you get a bunch of those helping your organization each year, then that can really add up. So anyway, there are a number of criteria to think about when it comes to private foundation corporations, and that's actually kind of the list I was looking for in that. I ended up giving people full credit if they put what they found in the textbook, which is, first of all, look at the biggest funder, which is government. Secondly, go look at the smaller. I gave people full credit, but that's not really what I was looking for. And, since I don't advise putting all your eggs in one basket, and since this course is about grant writing in general, not just grant writing for the government or grant writing for private foundations, I really kind of want you to know both lists. Start with the big funds, go to the little funds, but also, if you're looking for foundation money or corporation money, what are those things that you need to consider? And I think I actually attached for you guys a one-page kind of thing that kind of helps you think through those considerations last week. Anyway, I'll send more stuff this week, but wanted you to get this.